who are here on time, we figured we should start. I'm Vineet Gupta. I'm with the Boston Transportation Department. I'm the Director of Planning there. We'll introduce our team in a minute after I've done a little bit of introduction as to what this meeting is. I should point out that we are in fact being recorded as through the North End Waterfront Association, and this tape is to be made public and be available to the public for people who can't attend the meeting, I would assume.
On northendwaterfront.com.
Northendwaterfront.com. So just to let you know that the meeting is being recorded by the North End community. We are here today to talk about a proposal that we have for Commercial Street, really Atlantic Avenue, turning around and going up to Commercial Street. And I want to give you a little bit of background before we get into any detail. About 2 years ago, we came to your community and we did some presentations on installing what we call a cycle track, which is a protected bike lane in either direction. Protected in the sense that it's a portion of the road that pedestrians and cars cannot use. And through those community meetings, you said, this is a good idea, but does it really work? Because you're taking away so much parking. This is a good idea, but what are the real implications? And so as a result of your comments, we heard you loud and clear, and what you have on that section of Commercial Street are really 2 bike lanes, standard bike lanes in each direction. We didn't lose any parking, and that's the facility we had today. So I just wanted to start the meeting by saying that that's where we are coming from, and we realize that you care about bicycles, and you care about making sure that bicycles are accommodated, but you also care about pedestrian friendliness, making it safe for pedestrians, and you also care about ensuring that all the parking spaces that are on Commercial Street, each and every one of them continues to remain. So the proposal that we have for you today, we think accomplishes all those 3 things. Not only does it have a cycle track, a protected cycle track that is safe for bicycles, not only is it making it safer for pedestrians, but it's also protecting each and every parking space that is in this corridor. So that's my introduction. We'll get into the details of what this proposal is in a second. I want to make sure that I introduce some very important people, particularly Bill Egan. He's the Chief Civil Engineer from the Boston Public Works Department. And as we move into kind of the business end of this proposal, when we do get to construction and to final design, Bill is the lead and he's the project manager, and we all work hand in hand with Bill Egan from Public Works. We also have from the BRA, if Jonathan and Lauren Shircliffe, if you want to introduce yourselves, they're here.
Planner for the North End.
Planners for the North End.
Jonathan Gurley, planner for downtown area.
So we're working as a team. With that, I'm going to, unless there are any questions, I'm going to hand it over to you, hand the meeting over to Bill if you want to say a few words, and then over to the consultants. And our job is to show to you how we've accomplished all those 3 things: no loss of parking, safe bicycle accommodation, and making it safer for pedestrians. It's not magic, it's pretty simple. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Vineet. Yeah, I just want to briefly talk about this proposal here and the cycle track that we're proposing on Commercial Street, #1, but also this cycle track is part of a broader project called Connect Historic Boston. These guys will tell you about the planning study that was done a couple of years ago, citywide in the downtown area, and the ideas and developments that came up from Connect Historic Boston, #1. And then #2, after that planning study was done, the city went and applied for a grant from FHWA to build some of the components, not all, but some of the components of Connect Historic Boston. And that will get us a kickstart to completing the whole project. And the great part about this is it was a $15 million grant from Federal Highway Administration. The city is putting in another $7.5 million for a total of, I think it's $23 million is the total amount of grant money. And the good thing about this in a couple of ways is, one, we have to have the design completed by May 31st of next year. And we have to do that so FHWA will obligate the funds to us. If we get the funds obligated, which we plan to do, then we will be advertising construction, advertising the project in the summer 2014, and we'll be starting construction late 2014, early 2015. So this is essentially, it's a one-year design frame till we start getting out there into the street, breaking ground. So we would all like and hope that you pay attention to what we have. The fellas, the designers here put together. There's some great ideas that they put together, and also, let's work together because this is really a great thing to get this money because it just doesn't come along very often. Okay, so with that,
Okay, great. So thank you, Vineet. Thank you, Bill. So good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Nick Jackson. I'm a planner at Tool Design Group, and I'll be giving the first part of our presentation. Just first, a quick agenda. As Bill mentioned, we're going to talk just briefly about the Connect Historic Boston Initiative and the Tiger Grant, the components of the grant. And then we'll talk in detail about the proposal tonight, look at the site context, the goals for the project, review the concept, and then talk about next steps. I think it's important that this is our first meeting looking at the design concept, and we will be coming back to you as we refine the design. We listen to your questions and comments tonight, and we will respond to those at future meetings. So I think quickly, just briefly, the vision of the Connect Historic Boston is stated here, making the city an easy place to discover. It's a focus on transportation. As many of you know, Boston can be a difficult place to navigate, both for residents and visitors alike. So the goal of the project is to really help connect residents and visitors to the city's rich historic assets throughout the various communities. We also focused on all modes, looking at transit, walking and biking, how those different modes interact. So just quickly, the timeline for the project. It's important to note that this project was a partnership between the City of Boston and the National Park Service. And actually, the National Park Service received the initial grant to do the study, and that's the source of the grant called the Transit and Parks Grants. Most of those grants look at putting buses into parks, natural areas. This was a little unique in that it focused on a dense urban area and connecting people to historic sites in that context. After the grant, the city and the National Park Service partnered together officially and launched the Connect Historic Boston Initiative. And then following that, there was a planning study, a broad-based planning study. Community groups, stakeholders were invited to participate. And then 2013, this past summer, the city won a very competitive process. It's called the Tiger Grant. Tiger stands for Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery. So there you go, that's what Tiger stands for. Very apropos for a federal program. And then because it's about economic recovery, there is a fast track in the grant, so construction is anticipated to begin next year. So the Connect Historic Boston Initiative, these were some of the main products of that effort. It developed guidelines, and we'll talk about some of those guidelines tonight, but how to make it easy to travel throughout Boston, how to connect between the different modes. The guidelines address those principles. And I'll show later, there is a website for the project, and I'll show the address. All this information is available on that website, so I encourage you to take the time to visit the website and review this information in more detail. Developed a brand through a broad-based coalition. That's some of the branding you see there. Infrastructure concepts, physical changes to the city to make it easier to travel for many people. Also wayfinding, it's an important component of how to connect people to places, providing direction and guidance. And then some programming pilots, and again, those are explained in more detail on the website. So this is the website, connecthistoric-boston.org, and that's just a screenshot of the homepage of the website. And I should say, if you didn't get it, we have a handout All that information, the website is on there as well.
They got 5 minutes without a handout, I wasn't paying attention. Handed quite a few.
Great. And just as I mentioned, this was a very broad-based effort. We invited community groups throughout downtown, many in the North End, to help participate and shape the project. And that process will be continuing as the project moves forward. So I want to focus on the components that were funded through the federal Tiger grant. And they're numbered here. And the first one is the first phase we're calling the Connect Historic Boston Trail. You can see here, that's the piece here in blue. Tonight we'll be talking about obviously Atlantic and Commercial. Tomorrow night there's a public meeting about the next piece of that trail on Causeway and Stanford Street. And there are other community meetings happening about the project on Constitution Road in Charlestown, as well as the project on Joy Street in Beacon Hill. So again, this is the snapshot of the Tiger process. So we're here fall of 2013, having conceptual design meetings, early meetings. Coming in the winter, we'll be coming back to you as we listen to your questions and comments and we refine our designs. We'll be having further meetings. And then the rest of the schedule for the permitting and the construction of the projects per the outlines of the grant. So again, we're here to talk about this phase one of the trail, the pieces I talked about. And just a kind of closer look on the context for the trail. Again, the vision is to create a trail. And we call it a trail because our goal is to bring the experience of a off-street trail to the streets, to create a safe, comfortable environment for walking and bicycling on city streets. And the goal is to connect destinations throughout downtown to that regional trail network that's connecting to the trails along the Esplanade, to other communities, the Southwest Corridor, or other communities adjacent to downtown. So the blue line there shows what we see as the backbone of that downtown trail. So it's a 4-mile continuous facility. And again, our goal is to help simplify navigation. Those of you who try to bicycle downtown know that it can often be difficult. The one-way streets or challenging streets can make it difficult to navigate. So we want to help simplify that both for residents and visitors. We also want to increase transportation choice, provide a facility type that appeals to more people. We know some people are comfortable riding in mixed traffic or riding in bike lanes next to moving traffic. We want to design a system that appeals to a broader segment of the population and create a route that works for everyone, whether it's children and families. And we'll see some more images of what that means. So again, talking about the phase one of the trail. Again, this whole piece is phase one, Stanford, Causeway, Commercial, and Atlantic. Tonight we're going to talk about the pieces here outlined in red, Commercial and Atlantic. So I think Vineet touched on this already, but the goals, these are our kind of our overarching goals we want to achieve with this project. We want to improve the pedestrian environment. We also want to provide bicycle facilities that appeal to a broad segment of the population. Our shorthand for that is family-friendly routes. It's important, especially in the North End, that we retain the existing on-street parking capacity. We also want to provide direct access to community amenities. We want to help North End residents connect by bike, whether it's to the Greenway or to the trails along the Esplanade, provide those connections. It's also important we recognize that streets serve all types of vehicles, motor vehicles as well, and we want to look at maintaining existing motor vehicle capacity as part of the project. So the proposal we're going to look at tonight in detail, as was mentioned, involves converting the existing bicycle lanes to a two-way cycle track, and I'll talk about the definition of that shortly. As part of the project, we're looking to adjust location of some street furniture, look at redesigning bus stops to make them more efficient, but also as a way to optimize the parking capacity. We're making improvements for other users as well. We're going to be reconstructing sidewalks, making them smooth, putting in new crosswalks, and also new ADA accessible ramps for accessing the crosswalks from the sidewalk. As I mentioned, we're also maintaining the current travel lane configuration. There'll be no change to the number of lanes. Will be some minor modifications on some locations, but the basic configuration will stay the same. Okay, so cycle track is kind of a technical term. Another common term used for them is a protected bike lane. And again, the key to them is that they really provide a much higher sense of comfort for a broader segment of the population. So by definition, they're physically separated from travel lanes, as well as from pedestrians and from the sidewalk. They do take a little bit more space than bike lanes, and they have special considerations, street crossings. Just two images below. One of them is based on research looking at talking to the entire population to see what it would take to get people to bicycle more. And we know there's a small percentage of the population, the strong, the fearless, who will bicycle anywhere. You know, they'd be okay on Storrow Drive. They're comfortable racing fast, riding with traffic. A smaller percentage of the population, the enthused and confident, I mean, they're the ones who you see out there commuting, again, mixing with traffic, riding in bike lanes. There's also a population we know is not very interested in bicycling, the green pie there. So that's not a population we're interested in, but we know there's a very large piece of the population, the purple here, who would like to bicycle, but they're concerned. They're concerned about their safety, they're concerned about mixing with traffic, but provided the right facility type, they would bicycle more. So that's the population that we're interested in, providing facilities that attract to a much larger piece of the population. And there's there an image of a cycle track in New York City. You can see here it's separate from your sidewalk off the screen. Here, on-street parking protects the bike lanes from the travel lanes. As I mentioned, these are also can be a benefit for pedestrians. Many of these facilities are being installed in cities across the country. There's a lot of research being done. The research is showing that they actually have benefits for all users. One of the main benefits is actually they reduce the amount of bicycling happening on sidewalks by people who want to bike but don't want to ride in the street. Cycle track can provide a safe place for them to ride away from motor vehicles and away from the sidewalk. They also can reduce conflicts with bicycles in the roadway. And this is a couple examples. They allow you to speak directly to bicyclists. In many cases, you want to have direct crossings across the cycle track, provide methoding to yield to pedestrians. One of the other main benefits is it helps reduce the amount of roadway as a pedestrian you have to cross. Right now, with the bike lanes, those are part of the street. With a cycle track, you're actually not crossing those bike lanes anymore. So your street crossing, your exposure to motor vehicles is about 10 feet less. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave, who's going to talk about our design proposal.
Great. Thanks, Nick. My name is Dave Matt, and I'm with Howard Stein Hudson, and we're the lead consultant on the project, and we've worked with Nick and Tool Design Group on many projects throughout the city. As bicycling's been more of a focus of the city, Tool has been doing a share of that work, and Howard Stein Hudson's been working alongside of them on many of those projects. So when we looked at this project to see the type of design that we felt would be worth considering here and presenting to the public, we looked at many different things, and we evaluated many different alignments of a cycle track within the North End in particular. And those things include evaluating the safety of where that facility would be, and in terms of where the conflicts would be. Is it do you have many driveway conflicts, or do you have many intersection conflicts with parking? We also looked at evaluating the delay for both bicycles, vehicles, and pedestrians as we looked at different alternatives. And we looked at curb use, and obviously the big thing here was, and that was the theme, no net loss parking. And so we evaluated concepts that compared those criteria. And we also looked at maintenance. Maintenance is going to be a big issue. It makes sense that you put in a facility that can be plowed in the wintertime, and that is always open to travel for bicyclists. And so that's another thing that we looked at as well. And again, the big theme, no net loss parking. So just to kind of compare the existing and proposed here, today we have one travel lane heading southbound on Commercial Street, 2 northbound, and on either side there's a bike lane that exists today, and we have parking on either side. And so the cross-section's limited. Obviously, we're not planning on expanding to the neighborhood side or expanding the road cross-section to the waterfront side. We're working within the existing cross-section. And so what we looked at doing is taking those two, basically a 5-foot and a 5-foot bike lane, and shrinking the lanes a 1/2 foot on both this side and this side. And what we end up with is a bike facility off-road, a 10-foot cycle track, and a 2-foot to 3-foot buffer. And so, it's an elevated cycle track 6 inches above the pavement generally, and it's at the same elevation generally as the sidewalk. Now this varies throughout the cross section. I'm going to go through that a little bit here. And so the project starts at Christopher Columbus Park and heads all the way north to in front of Langone Field on Commercial Street. So this section here, which is basically from the intersection of Atlantic Avenue at Cross Street over to where Joe's American Bar and Grill is over here, and at that signalized intersection. Over there in that section, today there is no parking along the park side. And we recognize that as the location where there'd probably be the most friction between pedestrians and bicyclists. And so what we've looked at doing in this section only, over here, is maintaining that existing curb for the sidewalk. So not touching that piece of the sidewalk. Keeping the cycle track, a 10-foot cycle track that is separated from the pedestrian realm and the vehicle realm by a 1-foot granite edge stone, and separated from vehicle traffic. And so it's at the same elevation as vehicle traffic, but it's also separated from pedestrians. There's a lot of brick paving along here that gets expensive also to replace, and so we really didn't want to get into that too much over here. At the crossings over here also, there'll be breaks in that buffer granite piece, so that we can cross through the bike cycle track to the existing crosswalks on Commercial Street towards Christopher Columbus Park. So again, this whole thing will be basically ramped down from sidewalk level and will run flush with the surface level that's out there today. One of the things that we're still working through is how this connects to the next phase of the project, how it connects to the bicycle lane that's out here today and the bicycle lane that's on Purchase Street. So we're working through those pieces of the project right now, and when we come back to you mid-December, we'll hopefully have that piece figured out. But this is the piece that we're at right now. One other thing I should say, and for you folks that live in the North End, you might see the survey crews out there actively working. We're gathering a lot of data quickly to come up to speed to be able to submit these 25% plans in December. And so you'll see crews out there working, and so we're still understanding really what's out there so that we can incorporate the existing information into the design. So this is working a little bit further north, and so this is really where the parking starts. There's a bus stop over at this location where that we would maintain, and so the cycle track would ramp up to the sidewalk level. And at every one of these driveways, you'll see as we advance through the slides, what we're doing is we're bumping out the sidewalk. And so the sidewalk now would be further out into the street.
That by Joe's Aquarium?
Joe's Grill, yeah, right over here.
Joe's American Bar and Grill.
Yeah. One of the other things is that this light gray over here basically would be a driveway treatment, a driveway ramp up to meet existing. And so this cycle track would not be ramping down at any of these driveways. It'd be on a continuous elevation at the same elevation as the sidewalk. And generally, we'll have no less than a 10-foot sidewalk throughout the project. Now, that's the other thing that's pretty important here, and Nick touched upon it, is not only are we bringing the curb line out essentially 12 to 13 feet, but we're also reconstructing all of the sidewalk on that side of the street. And so it'll all be a concrete sidewalk, and it'll be ADA accessible. So right now there are a lot of elements of that sidewalk that do not meet current ADA, and we're planning on fixing all of that. The other good thing about where we're putting the cycle track is generally we're avoiding some of the trees and other utilities that exist along the curb line. But we do plan on looking at each one of the tree pit locations and the hydrant locations and the street lights and the signs and relocating all that to make more sense to separate the cyclists from the pedestrians, so have some sort of visual division between the two.
The blue strips are
That's a good point. The blue strips are parking. So you can see that we're maintaining the parking that exists along the curb lines there. So this is just working a little bit further up. Again, Fleet Street, the signal there, and we are, again, bumping out so that at ped crossing, we have a place for the peds to land outside of the cycle track and then cross the cycle track to the sidewalk side. And so at each one of the signalized locations, where there is a crosswalk, we are bumping that out to have a landing for pedestrians to get to beyond the cycle track. On this side of the street, I should also say, there's less friction generally, because on the other side, there's much more pedestrian activity, and there's also streets. And on the other side, there's fewer parking spaces, and there's some larger parking areas, but generally there's less traffic crossing what would be the sidewalk and the cycle track on that side of the street. And so that's another reason why we chose that side of the street for the cycle track location.
On the neighborhood side, they're not putting the red line,
Right.
except for putting ADA on the light.
Yeah, if you see here at each one of these locations, we show a little symbol for ramp. We do need to meet ADA on both sides of the street, and so we will be, modifying those areas. But generally, we're not touching any of that side of the street. We're not modifying any parking or curbs along that side of the street. We are going to look for opportunities on that side of the street where we might be able to get more parking in. There are a couple of opportunities that we've seen, and so we might incorporate, or will likely incorporate that into the plan, to hopefully end up at a benefit to parking as opposed to net no loss. But it's something we're still evaluating as we get the survey in. Here's an instance at Hanover Street where today there is a bus stop on this side of the street, and we actually gain a parking space. We lose it somewhere else, lose one, gain two. And so where parking is along that side of the street, might vary a little bit, but generally we're making things a little bit more efficient. So, in this area, for instance, we might locate a fire hydrant that might be, restricting the potential for parking at another location. So we look at relocating hydrants or moving a bus stop to better accommodate the parking. Also, it's important at these intersections to have good sight distance for vehicles turning into and out of these driveways and parking lots. And so that's another good reason for bump outs at those locations, so that as vehicles turning in, they can see a bike coming, or vice versa, a bike can see a car turning into those side streets. This is towards the north end of the project where we have Langone Field and the bocce courts over there. And here, again, we're maintaining the parking on the waterfront side. At some of these intersections, we may be bringing the cycle track from a 10-foot section down to a 8-foot section, let's say, so that we can slow some of the bicyclists as they're approaching some of these areas where there'd be more friction or more activity at a driveway. So that might be something that we would do as part of our design, but generally it'll be a 10-foot wide facility. And this is where the ice arena is, and so this is essentially our project would end right about here. And we would match into what Nick had shown you before, going underneath North Washington, behind the development, underneath North Washington Street Bridge, down Beverly Street Extension, and back onto Causeway. We're looking at opportunities, whether it makes sense we're understanding what the parking situation is out here. At some events, it's double parked, and one of the advantages of having a cycle track is you're not going to park a vehicle in a bike lane anymore and obstruct bike lanes. Now you'll have, a curbed facility that people won't be able to park on. However, off-peak, there may be opportunities for double parking that exists out there today, so I'm not going to say that.
I didn't hear it.
Okay. Lots of luck. We're also looking at, whether or not it makes any sense to go actually behind and along the waterfront, along the existing trail earlier, to prevent the intermingling of some of that friction that occurs over in this area. And so that's something that we're evaluating as well. So down in this section, again, what we have is we have a 2-foot buffer, but this will vary. It'll vary between 2 feet and 3 feet, and then the cycle track, and then the pedestrian area, which here is a minimum of 8 feet, but we're looking at getting at least 10 feet. Our survey's coming back, and I think we can accommodate at least 10 feet in all locations of the sidewalk on that side of the street. So just to compare what's out there today as to what we're proposing, today you can see this is that lane going field, and you have the parking, you have the existing on-street bike lane, 2 travel lanes, northbound, 1 southbound, a bike lane, and then parking on the other side. And so, here's that buffer that we talked about, the cycle track, and the sidewalk. And this is from basically a bike perspective, maybe. So from a little bit over towards the pedestrian line, you can see that the comparison that we're really sharing the facility here, and this balance of bike and ped, and managing all of the on-street parking as well.
And the 2 lanes.
And 2 lanes, we're not losing any lanes of travel as part of this. And just another view of what that looks like. We asked our graphics guy to open the door on the other side, but he opened it into traffic, so we'll get that fixed for next time.
Can you make sure there's a cyclist right at the door?
Yeah.
Is that tree in the middle of the bike lane?
No, the tree is actually right off to where it exists today. It's just, it's where he put the bike.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see here, that's the row of trees. This is the separation with lights and trees. It kind of separates the bikes and heads.
Question? Is that okay?
1 second. And so, as Nick mentioned, we're submitting 25% design in December, so it's a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. But we plan on coming back to you well before then to listen to anything that you have to say tonight and incorporate whatever we can into the design. And then in May, we will be submitting 100% design to Federal Highway and looking for our final approvals and advertising in September.
So we thought we'd rush to the presentation and then open it up for discussion. And as just mentioned, we will come back to you mid-December before any final decisions are taken. So we can show to you how we've incorporated any comments that we hear today or any comments that we might get online or through other means. So we just want to make that promise right now. So with that, we'll open it up for discussion. We can go to any relevant slide that you like.
We have other information.
Yeah, and I'll identify people as they raise their hands. Yes, ma'am.
We know one another. This is Dr. Francine Gannon, lifelong resident of the North End. Just a little bit of clarification
Sure.
relative to your opening remarks.
Sure.
2 years ago, yes, the city did come to the city and the community and explain the proposal for the bike lanes. Yes, we as a community did in fact think it was a nice idea. And however, we left that meeting, we thought it was a nice idea, but we expressed concern, just as you said, about the public safety and the pedestrian crossings. Of course, the North End is filled with a great deal of elderly. Yes, we did all that. However, I think when we left that room, the concern was that we didn't think it would be viable for our neighborhood because of the concern. So I give you credit for sitting down, addressing the concerns, then all of a sudden, some 2 years later, we see these bicycle lanes appearing, not only here in the North End, but West Roxbury and throughout the city. So we are into that project, we are into bicycle lanes, and as I look around, I'm about the only one who probably doesn't bicycle as much as everyone else here. And I used to love bicycling. But now I can understand the city's, eagerness and anxiousness to go after federal dollars when federal dollars exist, therefore going after the Tiger brand, who's gonna pass up $50 million. I understand that. But we are there, we're into the cycle. When I see Nicole Friedman is here, which I expressed my concern, and I'm glad to see, and I just wanna make sure, because I'm concerned where it starts on Atlantic Avenue. That's the concern I had, because we already witnessed something happening right at the very beginning when you started with the presentation, going right back where Christopher Columbus Park. Exactly. Now that, I just want to make sure I understand it. That is going to be not on sidewalk level or on sidewalk level?
Not on sidewalk level.
Yeah, well, I think there is where you really need it, on sidewalk level. Because there was an incident just recently, because as vehicles make, and I know you said you're going to address the situation earlier, later about just be going back.
It's actually not on the road. It's a separate.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand a lot, because there's a bicycle lane right there now on Atlantic Avenue.
Right.
But as you make that turn,
Mhm.
I ask you, please, drive it in a regular vehicle lane. When you make that turn, those vehicles inevitably go into the bicycle lane. For some reason or whatever, that's a tough turn, and when they make, especially a truck, I'm very, very honest with you, if it's a van or a larger vehicle, that goes into that lane, into the cycling lane.
One of the things that we're
That doesn't
changing there.
finish what
Yeah.
you're-
No, that's really basically my concern is there, because I almost just witnessed someone being hit not too long ago, and that happened there. But I'm very concerned. I do like the idea, just so you know, I do like the idea that it is two ways, and we're keeping the bicycles correct, all on one side.
Yes.
Are we eliminating the bicycle lanes that are along Atlantic and Commercial Street on the other side? I think it's wonderful. I mean, that they're together, but
Can I say
I'm
one
really
thing to
concerned.
address your point? One of the things that we are proposing to do is this is the existing curb line here.
Yeah.
We're proposing to change that curb line so it doesn't allow for that sweeping right turn. We're modifying that curb line, that corner, to come out essentially one travel lane.
I would even say, you can think I'm crazy, but I would rather cut it back and keep a cyclist further back rather than bring it
Well,
out.
it separates them.
So I'm just saying, because that, I'm telling you, vehicles themselves have a very hard time making that right-hand turn, that they really inevitably go over.
And also again, you know, we're making sure that there's a separation between that travel lane and the bike facility. So there's a physical, albeit slightly low, but there's a physical separation. So unless they ride the curb, they actually can't get into the sidewalk and cycle.
That's major, my really concern, and I'm glad it's going to be
Thank
addressed
you.
with that. And I'm glad to see, as I say, that they're staying together in the two bicycle lane coming further back, because I could never understand, when I was growing up, when we hiked or when we bicycled, we didn't bicycle with the traffic. I mean, we did as kids, and you took a chance. And whenever you did, you always faced the traffic, because if you saw a car, a vehicle, turning or swerving towards you, you could see it and you get the ability to get out of the way. But I'm glad to hear that, but that's my major
We will,
concern.
when we come back the next time, we'll explain in a little more detail as to how we're going to make it safer.
And you're gonna go on the sidewalk length from the Joe's American Bar and Grill to how long, all the way around?
All the way
Oh,
up
that's terrific.
all the way up to the ice rink.
That's terrific.
That's the goal.
That-
Thank you
that's
for your comment,
terrific,
really
that
appreciate
All the way
it.
around, that's terrific.
Thanks very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Ann Moritz. I live at 63 Atlantic Ave. I have two questions. One, those wonderful graphic renditions show absolutely no parking meters. Will the parking pay stations become a part of this design? And my other question is, are your conversations and your planning, which is terrific, by the way, I think this is wonderful good news, are they happening in tandem with other conversations in the city about preparedness for sea level rise and storm surges, or are those conversations occurring independently?
Okay, let me answer the first question first. The goal is not to change the existing regulations that are on Commercial Street. So whatever the regulation is, we'd like to keep that. So if there are no meters, then there are no meters. So as part of this project, we don't have plans to put any meters. If you want meters, you can let us know and we can think about it. It's really for the neighborhood to tell us what you want on Commercial Street on both sides.
I may not have been clear on my question. My question was the upgrading of the area similar to the Back Bay, where the meters have been removed and parking pay stations have been put in.
If there are existing meters, we will replace them with what are called multi-space parking meters, absolutely.
And that's the pay station technique, right?
Exactly.
Thank you, thank you.
Relative to sea level rise, this is a huge issue, and it's an issue that there's a task force, interdepartmental task force at City Hall, led by our Chief of Environmental Services, where we are looking at this issue at a citywide scope, particularly in areas like the North End, the South Boston waterfront, East Boston, where there are more impacts. And you might have seen last week a map that was released by FEMA, that showed a different, the potential for different floodplains. So it's a big issue to the extent that that commercial street is already in that floodplain. You know, it is where it is, kind of thing. So that's a bigger thing that we have to address citywide and kind of take head on. But thank you for bringing it up. It's definitely something that to think about. Other questions? Yes, sir, and then we come here.
Hi, my name is James. I'm a worker owner of Boston Collective Delivery. We're a courier and logistics company, one of over a dozen in the city. We operate all throughout the North End. We do over 1,000 deliveries a week, and we share the roads with pedestrians, other cyclists, community stakeholders. And our cooperative believes that this cycling infrastructure is a great step forward in building a new infrastructure that is informed by all vulnerable road users. And as a community member as well, like, I believe that the cycle track will promote people to walk and use alternative forms of transportation, and traffic mitigation will be increased, and that's good for delivery personnel, it's good for the community members, for people looking for parking, as well as it promotes more people on, using these different forms of transportation. I think that will benefit Boston as a whole as the community and the city moves forward in these plans. It's important to make that connection between the larger overarching issue of climate change and changing the way that we, use transportation. And this system is a beautiful example of how we're, working on finding solutions, not just like economic solutions or changing our habits, but like changing the way we navigate the city and promoting those.
Thank you. And if you have any, when you look at these plans later on or online, if you have any specific suggestions to help your particular business, let us know.
Yeah, my one concern is riders leaving the bike lane to get over to, the left side of the street. So we'll have couriers or other people who are looking to get to those buildings on the left-hand side. Safe transitions over there and back onto the cycle path.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Rebecca Albrecht, and I ride a bicycle in Boston, and I'm very excited about the Connect Historic Boston, so that I can who aren't so comfortable riding a bike in Boston. And just two things. One is that I guess it's a 12-inch, it's a foot curve between the cycle track and the sidewalk.
Yes.
And is that just going to be a straight up and down curve? Is it going to be sort of rounded? So, for instance, if a bicycle, is it going to be forgiving if a bicycle goes from the cycle track up to the sidewalk, for instance?
So,
And one more thing I want to
okay.
ask.
Right now, the plan is the 6-inch reveal, basically from the cycle track to the curb, would be a 6-inch reveal. It would not be rounded as the existing curb in this particular location that's out there.
So
we're
it's
not-
a straight, does that
It
mean it's
is.
straight up and down?
Yeah.
Can it be, because I know the ones that I saw in the Netherlands, they're more forgiving, so that a cyclist could go, could go from the cycle track to the sidewalk, a child or whatever. You just, if it gets crowded there and you get pushed over to there, you're not going to
Right.
fall over. So
In this section, that wasn't the intent. I mean,
I think she's talking about this transition.
no,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
talking about that
sorry.
transition.
Yeah, that transition.
Right.
And maybe we can round it or something.
And that's not the typical condition either, right? That's not
No, the rest of it is
So, and some people riding on that might not be real experienced, and they would just somehow come up against that, and it's it might cause people to.
Right.
But that's only in that particular section, from Atlantic Avenue where it turns around Christopher Columbus Park up to Joe's.
Oh.
Once you're past that, then as this section shows, it's all at one level.
I see.
And the separation is really through trees and street lights and furniture
okay.
and all those things.
And also, I was going to say also, just to point out here, there's there's really not an opportunity when you're in the middle of the block to turn left. So you have parked cars to your left and the sidewalk to your right. I think one thing we want to look at as we advance the design is allowing spaces for people to make a left turn at the intersection, providing a place to wait to connect to streets. Maybe Foster's not the one. That's the example I happen to pick here. But there are places where bicyclists do want to turn left. We want to provide safe ways to do that.
So I'm just thinking of less experienced cyclists that they don't sort of come up against something really strong. And then the other comment that I wanted to make was at driveways, when they come up to the cycle track and the sidewalk, instead of having it being at the same level, have you thought of having it so that they have to like go up onto the sidewalk and the cycle track and then they come back down again onto the street? So it's just another step to make them more aware that they're entering a space that's being used by pedestrians and bicyclists.
That's the design, right?
Yeah, well, we're looking at ways to
That's what the
chicane them essentially at some location.
So she's talking about cars that are going across.
So I think you're talking
Yes.
are you talking about the car?
I'm talking about the car. When the car is
Exiting
the driveway.
So they would have to,
They have to go up onto the sidewalk and then down
because
again.
this level is the same. So pedestrians, just like any curve on most
Well,
sidewalks.
for instance, on my sidewalk, my driveway at home, it's at the same level as the sidewalk.
That's what we're proposing.
Well, what if the sidewalk was, if the driveway was at the same level as the street?
That's what typically is the case in this particular area. So the driveway, as you're coming out, is at the street level, right? If I'm getting, I may have,
The driveway
And
is at
every-
the street level.
every location will be unique, but generally, the driveway for most of the developments on the waterfront side are at street level. You come to the sidewalk and you have to go up a little bit on the sidewalk and then you come to the street. In some cases, the driveway cuts right through the sidewalk and the sidewalk stops on the two sides. And when we are finished, the sidewalk will be continuous throughout Commercial Street. So if you're coming out of your driveway in a car, you would have to bump up a little bit before you come to the street.
So all of those sidewalks, they have to go up.
If you're
and
coming
then
out of your
down
driveway, correct,
But it's not like that now for all of them,
exactly.
but it will be.
It's not, I won't say for all of them, because it really depends on the topography of the driveway and how it interacts with the road currently. I mean, we do have to drain it, and we also have to make sure that the sidewalks meet ADA, and so, this area right here, for instance, we have to make sure that the cross slope on that portion of the sidewalk meets disabilities requirements. In other words, it can't have a slope greater than a certain percentage, 2%, for instance, over in here. And so we'll ramp them up, but can't violate accessibility regulations.
Wouldn't it meet ADA if you're on the sidewalk and it's all the same level?
Right.
It will be the same level through here.
From
We're
the
ramping up,
driveway?
though, essentially from the street to the driveway.
She's looking at it from a driver's perspective, not from
Pardon?
I said, you're trying to make sure that drivers who are coming out are made to pause a little bit before they come
That's
onto
right.
Commercial Street so that they mix in traffic in a more safe manner.
Well, that they
Right.
just are more conscious of that
Oh.
there's people on beat.
Yeah, that's, we're going to go around like this and then come here and then I'll come around like that.
Hi, Kara Oberg. I live at 84 Prince Street in Boston. I bike, I walk, I take transit, and I drive. And I fully support the cycle track throughout the city. I think it's an amazing opportunity for North Bend and the city of Boston overall. And I also think that I commend all of you for the public process. The fact that we're having this conversation at Conceptual Design is not common practice for Boston or anywhere in the country, really. So the fact that we're all getting together and having this conversation is amazing. And I'd like to go on record as a North End resident to challenge you guys to reduce parking. As a resident, I'd like to go on record.
Or don't
Thank
say
you.
to a lifelong resident.
Thank you.
Bostonians in general.
You may not get out of here alive.
Yeah, I'll walk you out the door.
I'm Steve Miller. I'm on the board of Livable Streets Alliance, and I want to compliment you particularly for the way this makes it safer for pedestrians. I think it makes a huge difference. I always think of my mother trying to walk down a sidewalk, and she could actually do this, given the changes that you're making. So I think there's a number of pieces that really make this safer for the residents and for whoever else is coming through. I have two thoughts in terms of the bicycle piece. One is I think I really understand why you're going to go to the path along the river as you approach Washington Street Bridge, but the reality will also be that most people taking this, if you're really being careful, you will take that path, but if you're commuting or trying to get somewhere else, you're going to stay on the road. So you should be thinking about how this ties in with future projects going over the Washington Street Bridge and through Causeway Street. So the connection here should be thought of as on-street as well as off-street. That's one point. The other piece is I assume you're putting in pedestrian advanced signals at the intersections so that pedestrians have a couple of seconds before traffic starts to get across various intersections.
So lead pedestrian intervals?
I was trying to avoid the jargon, but yes,
Yeah.
the LPI, lead pedestrian
Yes.
interval, yes.
I should mention one other thing too. We're also, at each of these signalized intersections, we're deploying bike signals. So bike signals will be an important piece of this so that
Okay.
it's clear for bicyclists what indication they're following. So we're going to give them that opportunity.
That's great. I was going to suggest you have a little sign that says bikes go on walk, because you want actually the bikes to go across those intersections during that 3 seconds before the cars start moving. But if you have separate ones, even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And then we'll come around like this.
My name is Matt Cassidy. I live at 78 Prince Street. I also own Prince Street Hostel and Cafe on Prince Street over in the West End, and additionally sit on the board for the Downtown North Association. So I'll have a lot of questions when we kind of move over to the Causeway leg of this, but I'm a huge proponent of the bike lane in general. I have a lot of guests that do come to my hostel and want to rent bikes, and we send them straight to the Hubway stations, and then they're out and about in the city. So this would be a great way for them to get around the city. I did have a concern in terms of just during the construction phases, how much are you predicting the traffic to be upset and just the basic loop road traffic at the north end during the construction of these bike lanes?
I would say that we haven't gotten that far yet.
But we are very
It's going to
cognizant.
be a part of the plans that we do develop, has to be a traffic management plan. And that's something we'll
Construction management plan.
we'll vet with the residents.
We have very strict norms over at the Transportation Department when contractors come relative to managing pedestrian, vehicular, and bicycle flows during construction. And we'll have the same criteria here. For sure, there'll be some disturbance. You can't really extend a sidewalk without some disturbance, but we'll try and do that in as efficient a way as possible.
And it would probably
And we are very cognizant of the businesses particularly. Remember, we are not doing any serious work on the neighborhood side, as we like to call it, except maybe some bed ramps and things like that. There's no moving the curb on the neighborhood side, so all the work is on the waterfront side. And so that will make it slightly easier to manage enough traffic capacity during construction.
I would definitely be keen to listen to more ideas, especially as you move into the Causeway areas, to how that.
There's a meeting tomorrow night to talk about Causeway over at.
I'll be there as well. And just to follow up, I respect his sentiments in terms of the bridge and going into the North Washington area. I think there's going to be a lot of attention to detail there because people will just make that straight cutaway. There is that pedestrian bridge, I guess, that goes under there now. Is that what you will be utilizing, or are you
Correct.
constructing something different?
That
will be.
bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, I was pointing out, and I think there is a reality that there is less space in the roadway moving in this direction. When we did the bicycle lanes, currently the dedicated lanes stop here, and that's because the roadway narrows around this curve, and there's just less space available. So that is part of the reality that we're working with. But we do want to provide connections, whether it's a shared lane marking. We do recognize people will continue directly to the bridge.
It'll be difficult because the road narrows significantly to have a cycle track past that point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you were talking just a little bit ago about bicycle traffic signals, and this summer I got the privilege of getting a tour of the improvements with cycle tracks in New York, and trust me, the majority of what's happened is positive up and up down there. But when it comes to cycle track, bicycle traffic lights, my observation showed that bicyclists treat it just like a regular traffic light. They go right through it as if they think that the rules don't apply to them. It's a very, it really didn't have change anything down there, you might want to keep in mind.
You want to talk about the Chicago?
Well, I think it's certainly something they are a new device, and I think a lot of research is being done, and we'll be looking at that. I think, again, the issue here, this facility is set back from the roadway.
Yeah.
So there is an issue of visibility with those signals. And also, we do know they provide different information than the walk signal. So I think we're looking at the visibility, making sure they are visible, providing them both on the near side close to you, as well as the far side.
All right.
Over here, over there, they're here, and then over there.
John Ramos, I've been riding this street for the better part of a decade, so I appreciate this enormous enhancement. Thank you for making this design a possibility. My question is the materials of the cycle track versus the materials of the sidewalk. Are they going to be different enough to be very clear where the cyclist is supposed to be versus where the pedestrian is supposed to be? And also, what is it going to be constructed out of? Because when you're riding on skinny road tires, you feel every little bump. So I don't want it to be concrete, in other words.
So right now, we're evaluating different types of surface treatments, but really the thing that we're kind of settling on, it seems, is bituminous, colored bituminous.
Okay.
So either it's going to be a tinted, not painted, but tinted bituminous, or a regular bituminous surface, and then the sidewalk would be concrete. Bituminous is asphalt.
Hi, Matt Donovan, Charlestown. I cycle on these roads all the time as well, and thank you for being here. First of all, what is this black perpendicular line with the 290 degrees on it? Does that represent something?
Oh, that is an engineering symbol for cross-section, and
okay.
that shows you that's what that's.
That shows that this has been taken looking in that direction.
Okay. This gentleman's question was excellent about the road surface. I appreciate that. And I'd like to know if you could expand on maintenance of it. You mentioned snow removal, and about how long do you expect this surface to last, and will there be any funds put aside, or will the city take responsibility of repair of this when they start digging it up for gas lines or other construction?
Yes, from public. Who asked the question?
We did.
That's a good question. And, Public Works is responsible for, maintaining the streets and the facilities such as the cycle track. And for one thing, after it's built, we have the issue of snow removal similar to the streets and whatnot. And, there's a lot of cycle tracks coming online, a lot of different bike facilities, and we're also responsible to clear out crosswalks and curbs and whatnot in a number of locations as a city. Over the past few years, we've gotten more and more involved in that. This cycle track, when it's built, it's going to be mile plus long, so we're going to need equipment to do that. Plus, we're building a cycle track, our section over on Constitution Road, and we have a number of locations. Other locations in the city, we're going to need special equipment. So, we're working to make sure or ensure that, when a snowstorm occurs, that we can plow these things. Probably what the program is now is we clear out the streets mainly, and then after the streets are cleared out, then we go to the secondary areas, cycle tracks and things like that. Then secondly, relative to maintenance, we'll maintain it. We have a tremendous problem with utilities in the city, and it's an old city, and a lot of the utilities are old, and they're getting updated, frequently or yearly. We have ways now, for the first 5 years after it's built, we have a guaranteed street where if somebody comes in and cuts something up, they have to replace it exactly in kind, and it's a substantial fine. So before we even go out to construction, we're going to be meeting with all the utility companies, and we're going to say, hey, you better go in and get some work done, because in the next 5 years, if you have to dig out a section of this bike track, you're going to pay a substantial fine to do it. And then the other thing is that we're really trying to crack down on people coming out to do utility cuts, and then not backfilling and reconstructing it as it was when they get out there. So that's some of the other programs that we're really starting to ramp up so that we can keep it, maintained, and then when someone goes really can't stand, but, you know, it's an emergency, there's nothing we can do about it. So those are some of the things, and I don't know if that addressed everything, but, yeah, we're trying to maintain it, and that's the idea.
And the final question was, how long will it last?
Well, you know, this is going to be around for a few years, you know. I mean, for an asphalt sidewalk and, you know, a cycle track, concrete sidewalk, you know, the way we build a concrete sidewalk now is we use a 6-inch slab as opposed to 4 inches, and we use a substantial gravel bed. The asphalt itself, I mean, this is, you know, 30, 40 years. After a while, obviously, it's going to start to get cracks and whatnot, and probably at the end of that life, you want to do a full reconstruction. But in between, from 0 to 30, 40, you know, there'll be areas where you're going to have to patch or something comes out of those spots.
Have you been able to mitigate tree branches before you lay these slabs down, to be able to deal with that? Because that always seems to be a trouble with tracks.
Yeah, and we're getting a little bit better on addressing that. There's a couple things we're doing. For a new tree, we have a new planting system. We're using sand-based structural soil, so there's a lot of water and air can get into that soil. So it helps the tree's roots get the water and the air that it needs without trying to pop up to the surface. For existing trees, you know, we're trying to do some things in and around the tree pit, cut it out, make it a little bit wider, so we can get a little bit more water and air in there to keep those tree roots down below the slab and prevent the sidewalk from popping up.
Thank you.
Pete?
Pete Stidman, I'm from the Boston Cyclists Union. One thing I just noticed in your talk there, Bill, is that something we work on with the DCR quite a bit is to get them to treat like paths as a priority when they do snow clearance. So it's a conversation that's starting, I guess, since you guys are starting to get these cycle tracks. But I'd love to see at least one employee dedicated to clearing them when the snow falls.
Yes. Yep, I'll pass that on.
And then I was wondering, just information, like,
What do you think of the general idea?
I think the general idea is great. I think it's stupendous. Having a loop through downtown is going to be a game changer, I think, in the city in terms of our livability and just, you know, even, you know, you guys have a lot of tourism in the neighborhood.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of tourism in the neighborhood. I think it's going to bring a lot more folks, and the businesses along Commercial Street are going to benefit. Just a couple of informational questions. I wondered, like, if there's a formula for the visibility you guys are doing at the curb cuts in terms of speed or volume that is going through there, and how much visibility you think you need for the cyclists as they're coming out. And then something that I kind of beat the drum on a lot, especially in the Casey Overpass project, which Nate's familiar with. We'd love to see something for cycle tracks that are at sidewalk level that alerts the vision impaired to their presence, so that something we talk a lot about is in Denmark, they lower them by just a half an inch or 3/4 of an inch, so that when somebody's using a stick to feel things out, they can sense that something's there, and sort of the dropping in the curb, I guess, mini curb, sort of an international symbol for something coming.
Or maybe it's a little kind of
Something tactile.
yeah.
And the connections to the bridge, somebody mentioned already. There's another path that comes back around close to the bridge that you could maybe connect over to Charlestown with. It's at the end of the project. I don't know if you guys have it on a slide.
We have
Yeah, it goes.
North Washington Street Bridge.
Well, you can come back before you go under the bridge too.
Pete?
No, there is a path that goes under, but then
I think you're
there's-
speaking of there are some pathways that connect closer to the bridge.
Yeah, there's one that comes up almost right next to it. At least I was looking at the satellite.
And then when Lovejoy Wharf is finished, it will come out inside Lovejoy Wharf.
That's why it's gonna be on the other side.
Well, that would be on the other side, but before, when you're on the path, there's at least a way to make a path that would come back just before you hit the bridge, and therefore people could go over to Charlestown, so they can come around Commercial and get onto North Washington, which one day. We've been talking to the people doing some of the early drawings for the reconstruction of that bridge, which would be a long time from now. But there's potential for having a cycle track that would go over that and connect to the Rutherford Greenway that's being built on Charlestown along the side of Rutherford Avenue. So it could be, another node.
We can definitely look into that. I think that one of the things that some of you might know is that we are redesigning North Washington Street Bridge. And so as part of that project, there will be significant accommodation for pedestrians and bicycles. And we would think about how people who are coming from Charlestown, and I know somebody said that they lived in Charlestown, but of how at this intersection where Commercial Street, Causeway Street, and North Washington Street merge, how that would connect back to the cycle facilities on Commercial Street as well as to the cycle facilities on Causeway Street. So we're very cognizant of that. We are severely constrained because road widths get very narrow at both approaches from Causeway and from Commercial. And because, at least for the Connect Historic Boston project, the goal was to encourage, family-friendly facilities, which is why we went around and underneath and back.
I can show you maybe after the meeting or drive after the bid. I think there's a way to do it family-friendly style.
Okay. No, that's why we're here. We're always open to new ideas from people who know are more familiar with the terrain than we are. Yes, sir.
So where does this leave the segway storage? I mean,
Touche, Matt.
I didn't want to ask that question.
you got to ask it, right? Well, the reason I ask, and is if the sidewalk, you're really expanding the sidewalk, right? And the segways were on the sidewalks, and then they were put in the bike lane under the new ordinance. And the ordinance, as it reads, correct me if I'm wrong, says that they have to be with motorized vehicles.
Correct.
So does that still put them in
there
the
would
road?
not be. So this is a sidewalk level facility. It's a good point. I don't have a legal answer to your question. We'll have to look at that in more detail. But intuitively, the idea of not having segways on a sidewalk because they conflict with pedestrians would apply here as well. That's my intuitive sense, but there must be a legal answer that I probably am not in a position to talk about.
I hope you look
right
at it, because
now.
it's not just the conflict with pedestrians, it's the conflict with bicyclists.
That's what I'm saying. So
Because
intuitively,
right
I would
now,
think.
with the segways in the bicycle lanes, bicyclists goes faster than segways, so the bicyclists have to go around them. Right? So if that happens on the sidewalk, then where are the bicyclists going to go?
We will,
to
at
get
the
to
next meeting when we come back in mid-December, I'll try and get you a better answer.
I just wanted to, there was a question about kind of the design of the driveways, and I think it is an important question because this is a difference between a standard bike lane, because we do have, I think the question was how we're designing the intersection. So one of the conflicts we're looking to manage is we have vehicles making turns. This is a signalized. Let's go to uncontrolled. Right here. Well, this one here. So we have vehicles who are making turns, left-hand turns and right-hand turns in here. We also have bicycles traveling here on the sidewalk. So one of the things we're doing now as we develop the design is we're analyzing those conflicts and we're looking at strategies to make sure we have safe both sight distance between the driver turning to see bicyclists and also so bicyclists can see drivers. So one of the things we're doing is we're trying to look at strategies that slow down both users at these conflict points. So that's one of the primary benefits of having the driveways, is that it slows the motor vehicles turning. It gives them more chance to see the bicyclists to slow and yield. Similarly, one of the things we're also looking at is providing a slight bend in the cycle track at the intersection, again, to slightly slow cyclists to orient them toward the roadway to improve visibility of those users. So bringing speeds down is a strategy that we're looking at.
I want to go just address all the new questions. So you haven't spoken yet.
Hi, Mark Heimovitz. I live at 357 Commercial Street, just before Battery Street on this thing. And I was part of the original group a couple of years ago that Francine had mentioned, and still am fully supportive of the lanes that we had out there now, and like almost everyone in that group, opposed to the cycle track for several reasons, not including the parking. And I would like to hear, I think I may have missed it, but how we were having no net loss in the parking. Now, and I should preface it by saying, I don't own a car. I use Hubway. If I need a car very few times, I use Zipcar. So personally, it doesn't impact me, the loss of parking, but it does impact the neighborhood and the businesses. And people have visitors that come in. One of the other reasons we opposed the cycle track as opposed to what's out there now is because we were already losing a lane of a travel lane for cars. But then it was also being narrowed a little bit, those lanes, and I know it still fell within the federal regulations and all that.
Right.
And now with the cycle track, we're going to lose a little bit more of the travel space. I think, did you say half a foot?
Half a foot.
Yeah, on each side. Now, it may not sound like a lot, but my concern is that folks who live on that street or walk that street, I've seen many close calls of head-ons because as much as we don't want to have people double parking, it happens.
Right.
At the ball fields,
Right.
all summer long it happens. The funeral home, and I know we're not talking about there, but the funeral home double parking goes back further in that way. It's a serious concern because when cars are double parked, some cars actually do the right thing and double park outside of the bike lane, which is good, but it pushes the cars out, so when cars go to pass it, especially coming the other way with just the one lane, there's been many, I don't know if there's been actual ones, but I've seen several
We are
head-ons, and that's a concern. So that'd be, first I'd like to hear that addressed. Second, I'd like to hear if there's been evaluation of the traffic impact after the lanes went in a couple of years ago, because on several nights, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, the one lane going towards Columbus Park is just, it gets backed up, sometimes to our building, we're pretty far back. And also, third, along those lines, is there going to be any looking into, down the road, any evaluation, I guess, of the impact on traffic, the impact on pedestrian safety, the impact on all those pieces, not just any one piece of it?
I'll start with the last question first. It's a really good idea that we should have some kind of evaluation program, as the federal regulations that allow us to use these monies require us to do that evaluation. And so you're putting together some metrics and laying out a strategy to be able to do that evaluation for a before and after picture. And one of the things that kind of exercise helps you do is to make modifications. You know, you learn a little bit about, hey, this is a good idea, maybe you need to change a little bit, and so we're open to that kind of modification. I can understand that, you know, you might have experienced backups on once it was down to one lane going towards the park. In general, at the department, we haven't seen a lot of change relative to traffic patterns once that lane went down. To be sure, there are instances, you know, whether it's 2 lanes or 1 lane, where there are backups. But the analysis that we did showed that you know, there's really not a lot of need for excess capacity on this particular stretch, because most of the traffic is going straight down on you know, along the greenway. So if there are any specific locations that you want us to analyze a little further, we'd be very happy to work with you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess where I'm specifically talking about, and I think it probably has something to do with the lighting up by the greenway.
Okay.
Over, because the traffic backs up from the Mercantile Building, the lights there, right there, and it goes all the way down.
So you're talking about this lane backing up?
Yeah,
Coming in
all
that
the way
direction.
down at times, and it's particularly during the evening rush.
Sure.
And especially on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, when others are coming into town. But the other reason I wanted to know if there was evaluation done, because, I mean, come down on one of those nights and you'll see it. I also wanted to know is, has it reduced the number of cars by making it easier for bikers? And again, I don't own a car, so this is not a self-interest.
I understand. I don't know if we've, I don't think we've done any direct evaluation, but we do have traffic numbers from before and after, and we can actually do
We can
it.
actually do it.
I'd be interested in it.
We recently, over the past couple of weeks, did take new traffic volumes along the entire stretch, and so we have that, and we did take traffic volumes before we looked at these bike lanes as well. And so we'll compare that, and also as part of the evaluation now, we have to put together what's called a functional design report to show Federal Highway and the City of Boston how all of this stretch will operate from a vehicular perspective. If there's a need to do better coordination of these signals, or to adjust green times at a particular signal because the demands are different from when they did a particular project, then we'll make that as part of this project as well.
When we come back in mid-December, can we do a special report on comparing those numbers one way or the other to see whether it's degraded or improved or whatever? So we will do that.
What I'm finding is that I'm Anna Ragusa, 63 Atlantic. I see bumper to bumper traffic. I have a deck, and it's all you see is bumper to bumper on that one lane.
Okay.
Okay? And the other thing is now I know people are cutting from North Street, so they don't hit that light, and they come down Lewis Street, and they go down Commercial so they can get out. So you have traffic behind us. And I have a bedroom that looks over that traffic also. So do you know what I'm talking about? North Street
Can you bring up that bigger map?
to Lewis Street. You have to because it's a one-way.
You won't be able to see it on that. It's difficult to see.
Okay, this is very difficult to see on this map, but we're taking notes. We'll do that
That's what
evaluation.
people do not to avoid the traffic that's in front.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If you're eliminating the bicycle lane on the right side, the neighborhood side, that would make that street a little wider than for traffic flow.
No, we're moving the whole. We're not.
We're moving it on the other side.
Yeah, we're taking those. So we're not.
You're absolutely right.
As is pointed out, we're still left with that one lane.
Motorists
That can be a
don't want,
problem.
they get squeezed.
So we'll try and do that analysis. We've taken the notes on that particular move, and we'll try and see if we can.
The Lewis Street, and then right on Commercial, and they go out to Cross Street.
People who haven't spoken yet. Is there anybody in the room who hasn't spoken yet who'd like to?
My name's Nick Schmidt. I don't live here. I'm around here sometimes, ride my bike, or visiting a restaurant. But I was just curious: are there any? Have you guys looked at any opportunities to add bike parking? I mean, this is such a great facility that it will surely attract people, which is the point of it. So, I mean, I would think there could be maybe on some of the bulb outs, possibly at the intersections. I don't know, but that might be site distance. But
Good idea. We will definitely explore that as long as it's not obstructing pedestrians. I'm gonna go in this direction and
I got a
yes, sir.
question. The bikes, as I see this, the bikes, if they don't stop at, like someone said earlier in New York, they're going through red lights, they're not stopping. The way the cars, the car lane is gonna be, if the bikes don't stop at this intersection, you're gonna have a lot of serious problems. Is there gonna be citations given to bikes that don't stop?
We started ticketing.
How is that gonna be addressed?
We started ticketing bicyclists. We figured out a system to do that. We started to do that first over where we've seen this problem to be rampant over at in the Boston University area. It's something that we want to do gradually. We want to do that in tandem with a good education program. So it's definitely a concern for us. And so that's how, that enforcement might be one way to address that. The design that we have is safer, I should say, than what's out there today. Where you have to, so the idea is to go towards a more safer environment for both bicyclists, cars, and for everybody. And what we're designing will make it safer than the bike lane that you have on the street today. So that's the direction we'd like to go in.
I was going to say about the what he was saying about segways. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is that currently, yes, I accept that mopeds are allowed in the bike lane as long as, I'm trying to get my numbers correct, as long as they have no more than 50 cc engine and stay slower than 25 miles per hour. My concern is that I'm not entirely convinced that mopeds are going to figure out the difference between a bike lane versus a cycle track, and we're going to have mopeds going up and down, and to me that just says moped and pedestrian accident waiting to happen.
Can we put a sign that says non-motorized vehicles?
We can. I guess I'm not really aware of that being a problem in this country. I do know in the Netherlands, I have heard some cases where that is a problem, so it's something to think about, but
we haven't really seen it.
Yeah.
We take, people are leaving and we want to make a closing statement before we, but Pete, and then we'll have another question over here.
Thank you. I just wanted to address some of the stuff, Mark, you were talking about. Like the narrow lanes tend to slow traffic down. So I'm not sure, the red lights are still there, so it's not gonna affect traffic too much, but it probably would make the street a little friendlier for pedestrians going across. You were saying that there's some head-on collision danger, but it doesn't quite address that, but it does address another thing.
Yeah, that's more the concern.
Did you have a
I think there's enough
Well,
crosswalks.
Just, there's a couple of things in New York that I could send you, but
That'd be great.
Prospect Park, they did an evaluation of that cycle track, which is very similar to this one, and it dramatically reduced people on sidewalks. It lowered all crashes overall, including like car crashes, and then it increased the number of cyclists on the street and slightly decreased the number of cars on the street. So there's some other examples out there of that kind of thing, and also I think these kind of facilities increase compliance because you give a cyclist a place to be and a signal that's addressed to them with a little bike symbol on it. I mean, and you also get more families and older folks and stuff that are more comfortable on this thing. There's more compliance going on, I think.
Thank you, Pete. And Pete has been very good at kind of doing a lot of work in making sure that pedestrians and bicycles and vehicles can all live together safely. So thanks, Pete. I'll go with the lady here and then the man in the jacket.
Well, my question was about the leading interval light. I don't know where you would have it on there. But I know when at certain intersections where I've seen where the traffic is stopped in all directions and you don't need a leading interval light, and then the pedestrian and the bicycle traffic can go through the whole intersection from all different directions without any conflict from cars. Is that a possibility to have that here?
I think what we're looking at still, I mean, we just collected the traffic data over the past couple of weeks, so we're still in the process of evaluating. The city has certain criteria for when to implement a lead pedestrian interval, and so we'll compare the data that we're collecting against the city's criteria. So there may be opportunities, but we're just not there yet.
So how can I find out about how they judge that something that would work for certain situations?
It's a balance of how many pedestrians are crossing versus the number of turns against.
I would also encourage, and I'll help you find this, but we have something called Boston Complete Streets. It's a guide to design streets in a way to accommodate everybody. And there are 2 pages, or at least a page, on lead pedestrian intervals, which goes into when they're useful, when they're not, what are the criteria when they're used. So I'll help you find that, and that will give you a general sense of what this whole LPI business is. So I would encourage everybody to go to bostoncompletestreets.org. We would like to say the nation's best guide on how to design streets, and it is extremely informative. I'm sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay. I just wanted to go back to that pie chart that you showed at the very, very beginning of the presentation.
The pie chart.
Well, essentially, you had a section that was purple, and that was the largest piece of the pie. Someone earlier said, what are the cars getting other than being squeezed by 6 inches? That population in the purple that is often the concerned population, and those are the folks that will opt to or are likely to cycle on a cycle track. So what are the motorists getting? Well, you're getting a piece of that pie, taken off the streets. People who are going to choose to go car free or car few, either leave that car at home or find that other way to go. So I think we might see a little relief in congestion on a commercial street. Who knows? We'll have to wait and find out. But I think that's a pretty big benefit to the car drivers.
I see a hand up from a person who has not spoken yet. Thank you.
I was out collecting signatures and talking to some of the residents on the street. The Essex School, the Elliott is right there.
That's a new school.
Brand new. There's a extended day facility there, and the parents said this is a really great opportunity for the kids. A lot of them said that they couldn't make it to the meeting because they're working.
Sure.
Just want to make sure that their voices are heard. I mean, it's definitely something that they would be interested in. And the Elliott uses that space a lot for the kids, so it would be really safe for that.
Thank you for that suggestion. I'm going to try and kind of consolidate and close out the meeting. two things. One, I think would it be fair for me to say that we are hearing a general support for this concept to be installed on Commercial Street?
Yes. With special emphasis on the traffic moving
Yeah.
on. And one other thing I still want to refer to pedestrian safety. I was just telling the gentleman here, we're back to the Elliott School where they're now located. They just moved into the new facility at 585 Commercial Street. I would ask you to please give special attention to where it makes the bend at the skating rink, at the end of Charter Street and Commercial Street. That is a very, very, very dangerous aspect, as people walking along the sidewalk have been pinned under a car coming around. That's very dangerous. I'm telling you, there's an accident there almost every week or every month or whatever. I'm just saying, and it was discussed at one point in time. I don't know if the $15 million would help, but it was talked at one point in time of actually putting, what do you call it, the barriers? The speed bumps across to slow the traffic coming around, because you have no idea how they come around. I'm just afraid they'll end up even hitting on the track. I mean, that's a very, very dangerous intersection. And I'm sure if you check with the police department or whatever, if they registered those accidents that happened there, it's very, very dangerous. It should be really seriously looked at. That's why the yellow light was set there and no one really
We will look at that again.
They come around there terribly.
And when we come back, so the second thing I want to say is that when we come back in December, we will try and show to you how we have addressed some of the things you've asked us to do, including the backup on the approach to the park side of Atlantic Avenue, that one lane, some of these intersections that have been pointed out. We do some research and try and get some, we may not have all the answers, but we'll
I think it's a wonderful design.
Make a good faith effort. I just want to say that as we do for any other project in the city, we always come to the community with a concept design. I heard somebody say that this is the first time that they've seen the city come with a concept design, but we come with concept designs in any neighborhood first, as we've done over here, so this is normal practice. I also want to say that we're a team here with the BRA, particularly Public Works and Bill Egan, who's kind of taking this towards construction, and the Transportation Department, and a host of other public agencies that are going to help us. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you again in mid-December.
Thank you.